I sat in the courtroom, my heart racing. The walls felt like they were closing in on me. I could hear my ex-husband's lawyer. She spoke loudly, pointing at me. Her words cut deep. She said I was unfit to care for my children. I felt the weight of her attack. The judge looked at me, and I could see doubt in his eyes. My stomach twisted with fear. I might lose my kids, Luca and Arya, to a man who only wanted power. I thought about my life before Derek. I was confident and had dreams. I had a career I loved. I felt strong and independent. But that all changed when I married him. Derek was charming at first. He made me feel special. I gave up my job to stay home with the kids, thinking it was what we wanted. But slowly, he took control. I lost my voice and my freedom. Now, I looked at my children. They were my world. Luca was 7, full of energy and laughter. Arya was just a toddler, curious and sweet. I loved them more than anything, but the fear of losing them filled my heart. I wanted to shout that I was a good mother. I worked hard for them, but I stayed silent. The courtroom felt heavy with tension. As I listened to the lawyer, I felt small. She painted a picture of me as a neglectful mother. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell everyone how I sacrificed for my children. But I knew anger would not help my case. So I kept quiet, biting my lip. I had to stay strong for my kids. Then, something unexpected happened. Luca pulled on my sleeve. I looked down at him. His big eyes were full of determination. He wanted to speak. I felt a mix of pride and fear. I could see he was nervous, but he was brave. He stood up and walked toward the judge. The courtroom fell silent. Everyone was watching him. Luca stood tall. He held a letter in his small hands. He said he found it in his father's safe. My heart raced again. What could it say? I felt a glimmer of hope. The judge looked at him, surprised. He nodded for Luca to continue. Luca handed the letter to the judge. I held my breath as the judge began to read it aloud. The words echoed in the room. The letter revealed plans that Derek had made. It showed how he wanted to manipulate finances to gain custody. The room was stunned. I could see Derek's face turn pale. He looked shocked, like a deer caught in headlights. Derek tried to dismiss the letter. He claimed it was not real, that it did not matter. But the judge did not agree. He looked at Derek with a stern expression. The power shifted in the room. My heart swelled with a mix of disbelief and hope. I watched as the judge's eyes narrowed at Derek. He asked for proof of what was in the letter. I could feel the tide turning. I realized, for the first time, that Derek's control was starting to slip. The judge called for an investigator to look into the claims. My mind raced. Was this really happening? Luca's bravery had changed everything. I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. I could hardly believe it. My son had stepped up when I felt weak. The judge paused the hearing to allow the investigation. I felt relief. But alongside that relief, I was scared. What if the investigation revealed something worse? What if Derek was still able to manipulate the situation? As I sat there, I remembered the chaos of my life with Derek. I remembered the early days, how charming he was. But that charm turned to control after the kids were born. I thought about how I had lost my independence. I had lost my identity. I was struggling to make ends meet, cleaning houses and taking care of the kids. I often felt overwhelmed. My mother had warned me about Derek's true nature, but I had ignored her words. Now, as I sat there, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I wanted to be strong, but I felt weak. I wanted to fight for my kids, but I was scared. I felt alone. I could not shake off the feeling that I had let my children down. The courtroom was filled with tension as the judge spoke again. He told us to take a break. I stepped outside to catch my breath. I needed to think. I looked at my kids, playing quietly in the hallway. They were so innocent. I felt a surge of love. I had to protect them. I had to fight for them. I promised myself that I would not let Derek win. I would do whatever it took to keep them safe. Luca walked over to me. He looked up and smiled. His smile was bright and full of hope. I knelt down to his level. I hugged him tightly. I told him how proud I was of him. He had shown so much bravery today. Arya came over too, her little hands reaching for me. I picked her up and held them both close. In that moment, I felt a spark of strength. I was their mother, and I would not give up. As we waited for the hearing to start again, I took a deep breath. I felt more determined. I would fight for my children. I would find a way to show the truth. I knew that the road ahead would be hard. But I also knew that I was not alone. I had my kids. Their love gave me strength. The courtroom doors opened, and we walked back inside. I was ready to face whatever came next. I would not back down. I would stand strong for Luca and Arya. They were my everything. And I would fight with all my heart. As I sat in the courtroom, my mind drifted back to the early days of my marriage. I remembered the charm that drew me to Derek. He was funny and sweet. I felt special when he was around. We dated for a while before we got married. I thought we were building a life together. But once we were married, things began to change. At first, it was small things. He wanted me to stay home more. He said it was better for the family. I agreed, thinking it was what we both wanted. I left my job, believing I would find happiness in being a full-time mom. But soon, Derek started to control more aspects of my life. He decided how we spent our money, who we spent time with, and even what I wore. After Luca was born, Derek's behavior became more controlling. He would criticize me for the smallest things. I felt like I was walking on eggshells. The more I tried to please him, the more distant he grew. I felt lost in my own home. I was no longer the confident woman I once was. I struggled with my identity. I wanted to be a good mother, but I felt trapped. When Arya was born, things got even harder. I had 2 small children to care for, and I was exhausted. Derek's criticism intensified. He would tell me I was not doing enough. He would remind me that I had given up my job. I felt guilty for not being the perfect mother. I was overwhelmed and stressed. I wanted to scream for help, but I felt too ashamed to ask. As the years passed, I lost touch with my friends. I spent my days cleaning, cooking, and taking care of the kids. I had no time for myself. I felt like I was disappearing. I missed my old life, the one where I was strong and independent. I wanted to chase my dreams, but I felt too afraid to try. The financial struggles added to my stress. Derek controlled all the money. I had to ask for every little thing. I felt powerless. I often worried about how I would provide for my kids. I wanted to give them a good life, but I felt stuck. I could see my mother's worried face in my mind. She had warned me about Derek. I should have listened. The date of the court hearing loomed closer. Anxiety filled me. I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. What would happen if I lost my kids? I had to prepare for battle, but I felt so weak. I often wished I could turn back time. I wanted to be that confident woman again. Then came the day Luca found the letter in Derek's safe. I did not know what it contained, but I felt a sense of hope. I wondered if it could help us. I knew Derek had secrets, but I never imagined they were this serious. As I sat in the courtroom, I thought about how much I had sacrificed. I had given up my career, my friends, and my independence. I had focused all my energy on being a mother. I loved my children deeply, but I realized I had lost myself in the process. In the moments before the hearing resumed, I felt a shift inside me. I was tired of living in fear. I was determined to fight back. I wanted my children to see their mother as strong. I wanted them to know that I would do anything for them. When the judge called us back into the room, I took a deep breath. I felt a new energy surge through me. I looked at Luca as he walked back to his seat. His small face was serious, and I knew he felt the weight of the situation too. I wanted to tell him everything would be okay, but I was not sure myself. The judge began the hearing again. I listened carefully as he addressed the courtroom. He spoke about the importance of the investigation. He assured us that the truth would come out. I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps we had a chance to expose Derek's lies. As the proceedings continued, I felt a mix of anxiety and determination. I was scared of what Derek might say next, but I was also ready to stand up for myself and my children. I wanted to show the court that I was a good mother. I was ready to fight for my family. Derek's lawyer tried to twist the situation, claiming I was unstable. I felt the anger rising in me. I wanted to defend myself, but I remembered to stay calm. I knew that losing my temper would not help. Instead, I focused on my children. They needed me to be strong. I thought about the times I had held Luca and Arya close. I remembered the laughter we shared, the bedtime stories, and the hugs. I wanted to protect those moments. I wanted them to know their mother loved them fiercely. The judge called for a short recess. I stepped out of the courtroom into the hallway. I needed a moment to breathe. As I leaned against the wall, I felt tears prick my eyes. I was scared, but I also felt a fire inside me. I would not let Derek take my children away. Luca and Arya joined me in the hallway. They looked worried. I knelt down and hugged them tightly. I told them I loved them and that we would be okay. Their smiles gave me strength. I realized I was not alone in this fight. As we walked back into the courtroom, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was ready to face whatever came next. I would fight for my family and my future. I was determined to reclaim my life. The journey would be tough, but I knew I had to keep moving forward. For my children, I would fight with every ounce of strength I had. The judge called everyone back into the courtroom. I felt nervous, but also ready. Luca had handed the letter to the judge, and I knew it could change everything. The atmosphere felt different now. I could sense the tension in the room. Everyone was waiting to hear what would happen next. As the judge began to read the letter aloud, my heart raced. I listened closely. The words revealed Derek's plans. He had been plotting to use financial tricks to gain custody of our children. I wanted to scream with shock. I had always felt something was off, but I never imagined it was this serious. Derek sat across the room, his face pale. He looked horrified as the judge read the letter. I could see the anger boiling inside him. He tried to dismiss the letter, claiming it was fake. He wanted to act like it did not matter. But the judge was not swayed. He stared at Derek with authority, demanding proof of the claims. In that moment, I felt a wave of disbelief. This was the truth I had been searching for. Derek had been lying to me and trying to manipulate everything. I could feel the weight of the lies lift off my shoulders. I had been so afraid, but now I saw a chance for justice. As the judge continued to read, I could see the courtroom's reaction. People shifted in their seats, whispering to each other. I felt a mix of hope and fear. What if this didn't end well? What if Derek found a way to turn things around again? I wanted to trust the process, but doubt crept into my mind. The judge paused for a moment, looking at Derek. He asked him how he could explain the letter. Derek stammered, trying to make excuses. He claimed it was just a misunderstanding. I could see the cracks in his facade. He was losing control, and I felt a rush of empowerment. The judge then introduced a court-appointed investigator. He would look into Derek's finances. I felt a spark of hope. Maybe this could lead to the truth coming out. The investigator would dig deeper, and I knew I had to cooperate fully. I wanted to show everyone that I was a good mother and that I could provide for my children. As the hearing continued, I felt my emotions swirling. I was scared, but I was also determined. I had to stay strong for Luca and Arya. They were watching me closely, and I wanted them to see that I would fight for them. I felt a new sense of responsibility. Derek's lawyer began to speak again. She tried to paint me as an unfit mother. I clenched my fists, fighting back the urge to shout. I wanted to tell everyone how hard I worked for my kids. I wanted to share the sacrifices I made every day, but I remembered to stay calm. I had to focus on the facts. The judge listened carefully to both sides. I could see him weighing the evidence. I held my breath, waiting for his response. I knew this moment was crucial. My heart raced as I thought about what could happen next. Finally, the judge ruled that Derek had to provide all financial documents. He would need to show everything related to his income and expenses. This was a big step. I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The truth was starting to come out, and I hoped it would help my case. As the hearing came to an end, I looked at Luca and Arya. They were still sitting quietly, but I could see the worry on their faces. I knelt down to their level and hugged them tightly. I told them we were moving in the right direction. I explained that we would keep fighting together. They needed to know that we were a team. After the hearing, I stepped out into the hallway with my children. I felt drained, but also relieved. I had finally stood up for myself. I had faced Derek and his lawyer. I could see the fear in Derek's eyes when the judge read the letter. It felt good to know I had made an impact. We waited as the investigator approached me. He introduced himself and explained his role. He told me he would be looking into Derek's finances and that he would keep me updated. I felt a sense of trust in him. I needed someone to help uncover the truth. As I walked out of the courthouse with Luca and Arya, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was still scared, but I had hope. I knew the investigation would take time, but I was ready to face whatever came next. I wanted to show my children that we could overcome anything together. When we got home, I made pancakes for dinner. I wanted to create a sense of normalcy for the kids. As we sat at the table, I looked at their smiling faces. I felt grateful for their love and support. They were my reason to keep fighting. Luca asked me about the letter. He wanted to understand what had happened. I explained it in simple terms, telling him that the letter showed how Derek had tried to trick the court. I wanted him to know that honesty was important. I wanted him to grow up knowing the value of truth. As we finished our meal, I felt a sense of unity. We were in this together. I could see the strength in my children, and it inspired me. I knew I would keep fighting for them. That night, as I tucked them in, I whispered a promise to them. I promised that I would always protect them and fight for our family. Their sleepy eyes looked up at me with trust. I felt a surge of determination. I would not let Derek take our happiness away. I would do everything I could to ensure they had a safe and loving home. With that thought, I closed the door softly and took a deep breath. I felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. I was not just a mother, I was a warrior for my children. I would fight for them with all my heart. The journey was far from over, but I was prepared to face it. I was ready to reclaim my life. The days turned into weeks after the hearing. I felt the tension in our home as we waited for updates from the investigator. I wanted to stay strong for Luca and Arya, but the uncertainty weighed heavy on my heart. I tried to keep our daily routine normal. I wanted my kids to feel safe and loved. Luca was doing well in school. He was excited about his projects and friends. Arya was growing more curious by the day. She loved exploring and asking questions. I cherished these moments with them. They were my light during this dark time. One afternoon, the investigator called me. He had news about Derek's finances. My hands shook as I held the phone. He explained that he had uncovered evidence of Derek's financial misconduct. He had been hiding money and making false claims. I felt a mix of anger and relief. This was the evidence I needed to prove Derek's true nature. I wanted to shout with joy, but I had to stay calm. I thanked the investigator and hung up. I took a moment to breathe. This was a turning point. I had to share this news with my children in the right way. They needed to know that things were moving in our favor. That night, after dinner, I gathered Luca and Arya in the living room. I sat them down and took a deep breath. I wanted to explain without overwhelming them. I told them that we were learning more about the situation with their father. I said that the investigator found some important facts that could help us. Luca looked at me with wide eyes. He wanted to know more. I explained that Derek had been hiding money and lying about it. I told him it was not okay. We needed to be honest and truthful. I could see understanding in his eyes. He nodded, taking it all in. Arya played with her toys, but she listened closely. I wanted to show them that we were fighting for what was right. I wanted them to know that they had a voice and that it mattered. I felt proud of how brave they were. As the days passed, I worked hard to rebuild my confidence. I started looking for a part-time job. I wanted to contribute financially and provide for my children. I found a local cleaning service that needed help. I applied and was hired almost immediately. It felt good to take the step. I wanted to show my kids that I could be strong and independent again. I also signed up for online classes. I wanted to study bookkeeping. I thought it could lead to a better job in the future. I realized I needed to invest in myself. I wanted my children to see that I was taking control of my life. I wanted them to understand the importance of hard work and determination. The kids were supportive of my new plan. Luca often asked how my classes were going. He would cheer me on when I studied late at night. Arya would sit beside me, drawing pictures while I worked. Their love and encouragement filled my heart with warmth. Meanwhile, Derek continued to try to regain control. He sent me texts and emails, trying to intimidate me. He claimed I was unfit and that I was making things worse. I wanted to respond, but I knew it was best to ignore him. I had to focus on the positive steps I was taking. I refused to let him drag me down. As the investigation continued, I felt more empowered. I was no longer the scared woman who had given up her voice. I was becoming stronger every day. I started to believe in my abilities again. I realized I had a lot to offer, and I was ready to reclaim my life. One evening, after a long day of work and studying, I sat on the couch with the kids. We watched a movie together, laughing and eating popcorn. I felt grateful for these moments. I looked at their smiling faces and knew I was doing this for them. I wanted to create a better future. Then, the investigator called again. He had more information about Derek. He told me that Derek had been using his business to hide money from the court. This was serious. The investigator explained that he would present this evidence in court soon. I felt a rush of hope. This could be the turning point we needed. That night, I sat down to prepare for the next court date. I organized all the evidence the investigator had provided. I wanted to be ready. I wrote down my thoughts and feelings about being a good mother. I wanted to share my story. I needed to show the court how much I loved my children and how hard I fought for them. As the court date approached, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. I wanted to face Derek and show him that I was no longer afraid. I was ready to stand up for my family. I wanted to show that love and honesty would win in the end. The night before the hearing, I tucked the kids into bed. I kissed them goodnight and whispered that I loved them. I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I was ready for whatever came next. I had fought hard, and I would continue to fight for my children. The next morning, I woke up early. I felt a sense of purpose. I got dressed and prepared for the court. As I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who was determined and strong. I was no longer the woman who had lost herself. I was ready to reclaim my life and my family. I took a deep breath and headed to the courthouse. I was ready to face the truth and fight for my children. I knew that together, we could overcome anything. I was no longer just a mother. I was a warrior for my family, and I was prepared to win. The day of the final court hearing arrived. I woke up early, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. I knew this was the moment I had been waiting for. I got dressed and prepared myself mentally. I wanted to show the court who I really was, a loving mother who would do anything for her children. Luca and Arya sensed my energy. They were quiet, but I could see the worry in their eyes. I knelt down to their level and hugged them tightly. I told them that everything would be okay. I reminded them how brave they had been throughout this process. They were my strength, and I wanted them to know that. As we drove to the courthouse, I felt a sense of determination. I was not going to let fear control me anymore. I had worked hard, and I was ready to face Derek and his lawyer. I knew the truth was on my side, and I had to trust the process. When we arrived, I took a deep breath. The courthouse was busy, filled with people going about their own business. I walked inside, holding my children's hands tightly. We made our way to the courtroom, and I took a moment to gather my thoughts. I wanted to stay calm and focused. The judge entered the room, and everyone stood up. I felt a rush of respect for him. He had the power to change our lives today. As we all sat down, I glanced at Derek. He looked tense, and I felt a small sense of satisfaction. I was ready to show him that I would not back down. The hearing began, and the judge opened the floor to the investigator. He presented the evidence he had gathered about Derek's finances. He explained how Derek had hidden money and misled the court. I watched as the judge listened carefully, taking notes. I felt a surge of hope. This was our chance to show the truth. Derek's lawyer tried to argue against the findings. She claimed that the evidence was not valid and that I was unfit to be a mother. I felt anger rise in me. I wanted to shout that I was a good mother, that I loved my children fiercely, but I remembered to stay calm. I had to keep my composure. The judge interrupted the lawyer, saying that he had seen enough evidence to consider the case seriously. Hearing those words brought a wave of relief. I could see the judge's expression had changed. He was starting to see the truth behind Derek's actions. Next, it was my turn to speak. My heart raced as I walked to the stand. I took a deep breath and looked at the judge. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted him to understand my love for Luca and Arya. I spoke clearly and honestly. I shared my journey, my struggles, and the sacrifices I made for my children. I told him how hard I fought to provide for them and how much they meant to me. I could see the judge listening intently. I felt a connection with him. I explained how I had lost myself in my marriage, but was determined to rebuild my life for my kids. I wanted to show them that they could overcome anything with love and honesty. As I finished speaking, I looked at Luca and Arya. They were watching me with wide eyes, full of pride. I felt a rush of love for them. I wanted them to know that I would never stop fighting for them. Derek's lawyer tried to counter my statements, but I felt strong. I had shared my truth, and I knew it mattered. The judge listened to both sides carefully. I could see him taking everything into account. Finally, the judge spoke. He declared that he was granting me full custody of Luca and Arya. I felt tears of joy welling up in my eyes. I had won. The judge also ordered Derek to pay child support, which would help me provide for our family. I couldn't believe it. I looked at Luca and Arya, and we all hugged tightly. The weight that had been on my shoulders lifted. We were safe. We could finally move forward as a family. As we left the courtroom, I felt a sense of relief and joy. The battle was over, and we had come out on top. I held my children close, feeling grateful for their support. I wanted to celebrate this victory with them. We went out for pancakes, their favorite treat. As we sat at the table, I watched them laugh and enjoy their food. I felt a sense of happiness I hadn't felt in a long time. We were a family again, and I was determined to keep it that way. In the following weeks, life began to change. I worked hard at my new job and focused on my classes. I felt a sense of pride as I regained my independence. Luca and Arya thrived, and I could see their confidence growing. We spent more time together, creating memories that would last a lifetime. I reflected on the journey we had taken. I realized how far we had come. We had faced challenges, but we had done it together. I learned that love and resilience could overcome any obstacle. One evening, as I tucked the kids into bed, I whispered to them how proud I was. I told them that we had fought for each other and that we had won. They smiled and hugged me tightly. I felt a warmth in my heart. I knew that life would still have its challenges, but I felt ready to face them. I had discovered my strength in the power of a child's voice. I was no longer a victim. I was a warrior for my family. As I closed the door to their room, I took a deep breath. I felt grateful for the journey and the lessons learned. I was ready to embrace our new beginning as a family. Together, we would build a bright future filled with love, laughter, and hope. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.